The bridge of the human exploration vessel Defiance fell silent as the massive alien warship emerged from hyperspace. Captain Sarah Chen gripped her command chair, watching the sleek, predatory vessel that dwarfed her ship by a factor of 10. Its hull gleamed like polished obsidian, adorned with glowing crimson symbols that seemed to pulse with malevolent energy. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission," Communications Officer Torres reported, his voice barely steady. On screen, the view screen flickered to life, revealing a being that made Chen's blood run cold. The alien stood nearly 3 meters tall, its 4 arms ending in razor-sharp claws. Its elongated skull housed 6 eyes that glowed like burning coals, and its mouth revealed rows of serrated teeth when it spoke. "I am War Commander Zekthul of the Hegemony," the creature hissed, its voice a symphony of violence. "You pilot a vessel of the species called human, yes? I have studied your kind extensively." Chen straightened in her chair. "I'm Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth Confederation. We're on a peaceful exploration mission." Zekthul's laugh was like grinding metal. "Peaceful? How delightfully naive. Do you know what we call your species in our tongue, human? Keltherese, the trembling prey. For 3 cycles, we have observed your pathetic expansion into our domain. Your ships are fragile, your weapons are primitive, your bodies are weak." The war commander leaned forward, his 6 eyes fixed on Chen with predatory hunger. "We are the Skarn Hegemony, conquerors of 1,000 worlds. We have devoured civilizations that existed when your son was young. The Zilani fought us with plasma that could melt mountains. We turned their worlds to glass. The Korvali wielded gravity itself as a weapon. We scattered their atoms across the void. The mighty Threxen with their planet-sized battle stations. We fed their corpses to our young." Chen felt her crew's fear rippling through the bridge, but she kept her voice steady. "What do you want?" "Want?" Zekthul's eyes blazed brighter. "We want nothing from you, trembling prey. We merely offer you a choice that we have given to no other species. Usually we simply arrive and begin the harvest. But your kind amuses us with your stubborn refusal to accept reality." The alien gestured with 2 of his arms, and holographic images filled the space between the ships. Chen watched in horror as scenes of destruction played out. Entire star systems consumed by Skarn fleets. Billions of beings reduced to ash. Once proud civilizations erased from existence. "Behold the fate of those who stood against us," Zekthul continued. "The hegemony spans half the galaxy, human. We command fleets that number in the millions. Our warriors are bred for war, enhanced beyond your comprehension. Our weapons can crack the crust of worlds. Our bioships consume the very matter of space itself to fuel their growth." First Officer Martinez leaned close to Chen's ear. "Captain, our scans show their ship's shields are operating at frequencies we've never encountered. Their power output is off the charts." Zekthul seemed to hear this somehow, his laugh echoing through the comm channel. "Your primitive sensors cannot even begin to measure our capabilities, little human. The ship before you is but a scout vessel, one of thousands in my personal fleet. Behind me comes the full might of Battle Group Crimson, over 10,000 warships strong." The holographic display shifted, showing a vast armada of Skarn vessels emerging from hyperspace in the distance. Each ship was a monument to destruction, bristling with weapons that could level continents. Chen's tactical officer quietly reported that their combined firepower could sterilize every world in human space within days. "So here is your choice." "Captain Chen of the Trembling Humans," Zekthul said, savoring each word. "Flee. Run back to your small blue world and tell your leaders that the Skarn hegemony comes. Gather your fleets, evacuate your colonies, abandon your dreams of expansion. Perhaps if you retreat far enough, fast enough, we might allow some of your kind to survive as servants in our empire." The war commander paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "Or remain here and die pointlessly. Adding your ship to the debris field we will leave as a warning to others. The choice is yours, but choose quickly. My warriors grow restless for the hunt to begin." Chen looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew. She saw fear there, yes, but also something else. Determination. Defiance. The same spirit that had driven humanity from the caves to the stars. "You know," Chen said slowly, "you're not the first bully humanity has faced." Zekthul's eyes narrowed. "Explain." "Throughout our history, we've encountered beings who thought they were superior, who believed their strength gave them the right to dominate others. Dictators, tyrants, empires that seemed unstoppable." Chen stood from her chair, her voice growing stronger. "We have a saying on Earth. The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. The alien's expression shifted to one of confused irritation. Your words mean nothing, prey creature. Will you flee or will you die? Chen smiled, and somehow that expression was more unsettling than any weapon. You've made one critical error in your calculations, War Commander Zekthul. And what is that? You assume that survival is humanity's primary goal. Chen activated her ship's general comm system, her voice now broadcasting to every member of her crew. All hands, this is the captain. We've just met the galaxy's newest bully. They want us to run home scared, to abandon everything we've built out here. What do you say we show them what humans do to bullies? The response came as a roar of approval from throughout the ship. Even in the face of impossible odds, her crew stood ready to fight. Zekthul stared at the view screen in genuine bewilderment. You cannot seriously intend to resist? You are one small ship against the might of the hegemony. This is madness. Maybe, Chen agreed, but it's our madness. Helm, set course for that battle group. All hands to battle stations. As the Defiance turned toward the vast Skarn armada, Zekthul's confusion transformed into rage. You will die for this insolence, human. We will hunt down every member of your species and make them suffer for your stupidity. We'll see about that, Chen replied, cutting the transmission. The small human ship accelerated toward certain doom, its crew united in defiance against an empire that had conquered half the galaxy. Behind them, their automated distress beacon began transmitting a message that would soon reach Earth. First contact established. Enemy force overwhelming. We will not surrender. Humanity stands. The throne room of the hegemony's capital world fell silent as War Commander Zekthul finished his report. The massive chamber, carved from the bones of the extinct Leviathan species, seemed to absorb sound itself. At its center sat the Overlord Supreme, a being so ancient and modified that little remained of his original form. Cybernetic implants covered most of his body, and his consciousness had been expanded across multiple biomechanical interfaces. Repeat that, the Overlord commanded, his voice emanating from speakers built into the throne itself. Zekthul swallowed hard, his forearms trembling slightly. My lord, the humans, they defeated Battle Group Crimson, not through superior firepower, but through tactics we had not encountered before. A murmur of disbelief rippled through the assembled war commanders. In 3,000 years of hegemony expansion, no force had ever defeated a full battle group. 13 ships, the Overlord stated flatly. 13 primitive vessels defeated 10,000 of our finest warriors. The humans fight differently than any species we have encountered, Zekthul explained desperately. They do not follow standard combat doctrine. Their movements are chaotic, unpredictable. They coordinate their attacks in ways our tactical computers cannot anticipate. War Commander Vorthok, Zekthul's longtime rival, stepped forward. My lord, surely this is exaggeration. The human vessels were observed to have primitive armor and weaponry. How could they possibly? Because we have grown weak, interrupted a new voice. All eyes turned to the chamber's entrance, where an ancient Skarn approached the throne. This was strategic mind Caranthal, one of the oldest beings in the hegemony. He had been present during the Empire's early expansion, when they still faced real resistance. Continue, the Overlord commanded. Caranthal's 6 eyes swept across the assembled commanders. For 2,000 years, we have fought the same way against the same types of enemies. We arrive with overwhelming force, demand surrender, then destroy all resistance through superior firepower. It has made us predictable. Predictable? Vorthak snarled. We are the hegemony. Our power is absolute. Our power is great, yes, Caranthal agreed. But power without adaptation is weakness. The humans have shown us something we had forgotten. That warfare is not just about strength, but about thinking. The Overlord's mechanical fingers drummed against his throne. Elaborate. I have studied the battle recordings extensively. The humans used our own tactics against us. When we formed attack formations, they struck from unexpected angles. When we tried to surround them, they used our own ships as obstacles. They turned our coordination into confusion. Zekthul nodded eagerly. Exactly. They fight like they have been at war with themselves for millennia. Every tactic we used, they had a counter for. Every strategy we employed, they had already seen and defeated. Strategic Mind Caranthal activated a holographic display showing the human homeworld. I have analyzed their history extensively, These creatures have been in constant conflict for their entire evolutionary period. They have fought wars against enemies with superior numbers, better equipment, and stronger positions. They have learned to win through cunning when strength fails them. The Overlord leaned forward, his interest clearly piqued. "Show me." The hologram shifted to display scenes from human history, ancient battles where smaller forces defeated larger ones through superior tactics, technological innovations born from desperate necessity, strategies that turned weakness into strength. "Observe," Carenthal continued. "When faced with stronger enemies, they do not simply fight harder. They fight smarter. They innovate. They adapt. They turn their enemy's strength against them." War Commander Vorthak scoffed. "So they have clever tactics. We will simply adapt our own strategies to counter theirs." "That is exactly what they expect us to do," Carenthal replied. "And while we adapt to their current tactics, they will have already moved on to new ones. This is their greatest strength. Not their weapons or their ships, but their ability to constantly evolve their approach to warfare." The Overlord was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. Finally he spoke. "What do you recommend?" "We must change our entire approach to this conflict," Carenthal said. "We cannot simply throw more ships at them and expect victory. We must study them, learn how they think, understand their weaknesses." "And their weaknesses are?" Carenthal smiled, an expression that would have terrified most beings in the galaxy. "They are still physically weak. Their ships are still primitive. Their numbers are still small. But most importantly, they care about their civilians." The hologram changed again, showing human colonies and settlements. "The hegemony has always focused on military targets first. We destroy the enemy's ability to fight, then mop up their population. But humans, they will sacrifice everything to protect their non-combatants. You suggest we target their civilians? I suggest we make them choose between victory and the lives of their people. Force them to divide their attention between offensive operations and defensive ones. Make them fight the war we want to fight, not the one they excel at." The Overlord nodded slowly. "Prepare 3 assault fleets. But this time we attack differently. Simultaneous strikes against their military installations and their colonies. Force them to react instead of act." "My lord," Zekthul interjected, "what of their tactical superiority?" "We neutralize it," Strategic Mind Carenthal answered. "We studied their battle recordings. They excel at small unit actions and coordinated strikes, so we give them neither. We attack with such overwhelming numbers that their tactics become irrelevant. We spread our forces across so many targets that they cannot coordinate an effective response. And if they develop countermeasures, then we adapt again," the Overlord declared. "For too long we have relied on our reputation to win battles before they begin. The humans have shown that reputation means nothing against determined resistance. Very well, they want a real war. We shall give them one." The assembled war commanders began to disperse, but the Overlord called out once more. "War Commander Zekthul, my lord, you will lead the assault on their homeworld. Consider it an opportunity to redeem yourself." As the throne room emptied, Strategic Mind Carenthal remained behind. The Overlord looked down at his ancient advisor. "You believe we can defeat them?" "Eventually, yes," Carenthal replied. "But it will not be the easy conquest we are accustomed to. These humans, they remind me of ourselves in the early days of the hegemony, desperate, clever, and absolutely unwilling to surrender. You almost sound like you admire them." Carenthal considered this. "I respect them. They have done something no species has managed in 2 millennia. They have made the hegemony doubt itself." "That is a remarkable achievement. And yet you believe we will ultimately triumph?" "Because we must," Carenthal said simply. "The alternative is unthinkable. If the hegemony can be defeated by a handful of primitive worlds, then everything we have built, everything we represent, becomes meaningless. No, my lord, we will defeat the humans, but it will cost us more than any victory in our history." The Overlord's mechanical eyes glowed brighter. "Then so be it. Some in the Grand Fleet, all sectors, all reserves. We will show these humans what the full might of the hegemony looks like." Across the galaxy, Skarn shipyards began working around the clock. Ancient vessels were pulled from mothballs and upgraded. New weapons were designed specifically to counter human tactics. Battle computers were reprogrammed to handle unpredictable movements. For the first time in centuries, the hegemony was preparing for a real war. They had grown soft and predictable, but they were learning. The question was whether humanity could stay ahead of an empire that controlled half the galaxy and was now fully committed to their destruction. The age of easy victories was over. The real test was about to begin. The Defiance shuddered as Skarn plasma bolts hammered against its shields. Captain Chen gripped her command chair as sparks flew from overloaded consoles around the bridge. Through the chaos, she watched her tactical display with grim satisfaction. "Captain, their lead destroyer is breaking formation," Lieutenant Rodriguez called out from the weapons station. "They're moving to intercept us directly." "Predictable," Chen muttered. "These Skarn seem to fight like every other bully we've encountered. All brute force, no finesse." The past hour had been a revelation. What should have been a massacre had become something else entirely. The Defiance, despite being laughably outgunned, had managed to destroy 3 Skarn escort vessels and damage a dozen others. Not through superior firepower, but through something the aliens couldn't seem to comprehend: unpredictability. "Helm, execute pattern Delta 7, Chen ordered. The ship suddenly dove beneath the plane of battle, rolling in a complex spiral that defied conventional space combat doctrine. Skarn targeting systems, designed to track ships that followed logical tactical patterns, struggled to lock onto the wildly maneuvering human vessel. "Their formation is collapsing," First Officer Martinez reported with amazement. "3 of their cruisers just collided trying to follow our movement," Chen smiled grimly. The Skarn fought like a machine, precise, overwhelming, but utterly inflexible. They had conquered countless civilizations using the same basic strategy: appear with overwhelming force, demand surrender, then methodically destroy all resistance. It was efficient, but it had made them complacent. "Weapons, target that command ship's sensor array. Fire when ready." The Defiance's railgun spoke, sending a tungsten projectile racing across space at a significant fraction of light speed. The Skarn shields, designed to stop energy weapons and explosive ordnance, barely slowed the kinetic projectile. It punched through their defenses and shattered the warship's primary sensor cluster. War Commander Zekthul's voice crackled across the comm system, his earlier confidence replaced by barely controlled fury. "Impossible. How do you continue to evade our weapons? Your ship should have been destroyed a dozen times over." "Maybe you're not as good at this as you think," Chen replied, watching as another Skarn vessel fell victim to its own allies' friendly fire. "Tell me, War Commander, how long has it been since the hegemony faced real resistance?" There was a pause before Zekthul responded. The Threxan held out for 6 rotations before their defeat. Before them, the Corvalli managed 4. "What does this matter? 6 rotations? What's that, about 8 months?" Chen shook her head. "We humans have been fighting each other for thousands of years. We've had wars that lasted decades. We've studied every possible tactic, strategy, and counter-strategy. We've learned to fight enemies with superior numbers, better weapons, and stronger defenses." The Defiance suddenly reversed course, using its main engines to decelerate rapidly while firing its maneuvering thrusters to spin the ship 180 degrees. The unexpected maneuver caught the pursuing Skarn destroyers off guard, and the human ship's weapons raked across their unprotected engine sections. "You see, War Commander, you've made a fundamental error. You think warfare is about having the biggest gun or the strongest armor. But humans learned long ago that the most powerful weapon is the one your enemy doesn't expect." Chief Engineer Kim's voice came over the intercom. "Captain, I've finished analyzing their shield frequencies. I think I know why our kinetic weapons are so effective. Report. Their entire defensive strategy is based on energy warfare. Their shields are specifically designed to deflect plasma, lasers, and particle beams. They've optimized everything for that type of combat." Chen's eyes lit up with understanding. "But kinetic weapons are primitive by their standards. They probably haven't faced them in centuries." "Exactly. Their shields can stop a plasma blast that would vaporize a moon, but they're weak against simple mass and velocity." Across the battlefield, Zekthul watched in growing disbelief as his seemingly invincible fleet struggled against a single human vessel. Ships designed to crack planets were being outmaneuvered by a craft that wouldn't qualify as a shuttle in the hegemony fleet. His warriors, bred for aggression and victory, were beginning to show something he had never seen before: uncertainty. "War Commander," his tactical officer reported, "they're broadcasting some kind of transmission, not directed at us but toward their home system. Intercept it." The message was brief but chilling. "Earth Command, this is Captain Chen of the Defiance. Have engaged Skarn Hegemony Battle Group. Enemy tactics predictable, formations rigid. Recommend implementation of Defensive Protocol 7. They can be beaten. Zekthel's 6 eyes blazed with rage. They dare to suggest they can defeat the hegemony? Increase power to all weapons. I want that ship reduced to atoms. But even as his fleet unleashed everything they had, the Defiance continued to dance between their attacks. Chen had realized something crucial about the Skarn. They were too successful. Their overwhelming power had made them lazy, their tactics stale. They fought like a force that had never truly been challenged. "Captain," Communications Officer Torres called out, "I'm picking up something strange. Multiple hyperspace signatures, but they're not Skarn." Chen frowned. "Identify them." "Unknown configuration, but they're broadcasting Confederation recognition codes. Wait, Captain, it's Admiral Harrison's task force from the Jupiter yards." The space around the battlefield suddenly erupted with new arrivals. A dozen human vessels materialized from hyperspace. Not the exploration ships that usually patrolled this region, but warships hastily recalled from training exercises. They were still outnumbered 100 to 1, but their arrival changed everything. "All Confederation vessels, this is Admiral Harrison aboard the Yorktown," came a familiar voice. "Form up on the Defiance. Let's show these aliens what happens when you threaten humanity." Zekthul watched in stunned silence as the human fleet moved with a coordination his forces couldn't match. Instead of the rigid formations the Skarn expected, the human ships operated like a pack of predators, each vessel covering the others while striking at weak points in his battle line. "This cannot be happening," he whispered. "We are the hegemony. We are inevitable." But as his forces continued to fall to human tactics they couldn't predict or counter, Zekthul began to understand that his empire had made a terrible mistake. They had assumed that might made right, that superior technology guaranteed victory. They had never encountered an enemy that turned their own strength against them. "War Commander," his second-in-command reported, "we've lost 30% of our forward elements. The humans are using some kind of coordinated attack pattern we've never seen before." Zekthul stared at the tactical display in disbelief. A handful of primitive human vessels were systematically dismantling a battle group that had conquered star systems. For the first time in his long military career, he felt something he thought his kind had bred out of themselves generations ago. Fear. "Retreat," he whispered. "Sir?" "Signal the fleet," Zekthul said louder, his voice carrying across the bridge. "Full retreat. We withdraw to regroup." As the surviving Skarn vessels fled toward hyperspace, Captain Chen allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. They had done the impossible. They had made the galaxy's most feared empire run away. But she knew this was just the beginning. The hegemony would return with greater numbers and harder lessons learned. The real war was about to begin. War Commander Zekthul emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, expecting to find the humans' last desperate fleet arrayed in defense of their homeworld. Instead, his sensors detected nothing but empty space and the quiet hum of normal stellar activity. "Tactical analysis," he commanded, his 6 eyes scanning the displays with growing confusion. "Sir, we're detecting minimal ship signatures, perhaps a dozen vessels in the outer system running silent. No significant defensive formations around the primary world." Zekthul's mandibles clicked in frustration. Intelligence had suggested the humans would make their final stand here, at Earth. The fact that they weren't present suggested either cowardice or a trap. "Deploy scout wings. Search every asteroid, every moon, every debris field. The humans are here somewhere." As his forces spread throughout the system, Zekthul received reports from the other invasion fleets. Alpha Centauri was similarly empty. New Terra showed signs of recent evacuation. Across human space, the pattern was the same. Civilian populations apparently fled, military forces withdrawn to unknown positions. "They're abandoning their worlds," his second-in-command observed. "Perhaps they've learned wisdom." "No," Zekthul replied grimly. "Humans don't retreat. This is something else." His suspicions were confirmed when the first attack came, not from a direction his sensors could detect, but from within his own formation. One of his heavy cruisers suddenly listed to starboard, its weapon systems firing randomly at nearby vessels. "Report," Zekthul roared. "Unknown malfunction in the Bloodfang's targeting systems. They're claiming they're under attack, but sensors show no hostile contacts." More ships began reporting similar problems. Navigation systems providing false readings. Weapons targeting friendly vessels. Communication arrays broadcasting gibberish instead of tactical data. It's their cyber warfare capabilities, his intelligence officer reported. Somehow they're infiltrating our networks. But even as they dealt with the electronic warfare, the real attacks began. Small human vessels, no larger than shuttles, emerged from hiding places throughout the system. They moved with impossible speed and agility, striking at Skarn ships with surgical precision before vanishing again. These are not warships, Zechthel's tactical officer observed, studying the sensor readings. They appear to be modified civilian craft. Mining ships, cargo haulers, even personal yachts. How are they penetrating our defenses? They're not trying to. They're targeting specific subsystems. Sensor arrays, communication nodes, engine control systems. Precision strikes designed to disable rather than destroy. Zechthel watched in growing frustration as his mighty fleet was systematically blinded and crippled by an enemy they couldn't properly engage. Every time his forces moved to intercept the human attackers, they found empty space. The humans seemed to know exactly where his ships would be and when. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the planet's surface. Put it through." The view screen flickered to life, showing a woman in civilian clothes sitting in what appeared to be an ordinary office. She looked remarkably calm for someone whose planet was under invasion. "Greetings, War Commander Zechthel. I'm Dr. Elena Vasquez, Special Advisor for Unconventional Warfare. Welcome to Earth. Where are your fleets?" Zechthel demanded. "Where are your defenses?" "All around you," Vasquez replied with a smile. "You're just looking for the wrong things." As if to emphasize her point, another of his vessels reported systems failures. This time it was his command ship's backup power grid. "You see, War Commander, you've been thinking about this all wrong. You expected to find human ships arranged in neat formations, ready to fight the kind of battle you understand. But we learned something from our first encounter. And what is that? Fighting you on your terms is suicide. So we decided to fight you on ours instead." The transmission shifted to show views from across the Sol system. What Zechthel had initially dismissed as debris fields and asteroid clusters resolved into something else entirely. Camouflaged installations, hidden shipyards, mobile weapon platforms disguised as space junk. Every asteroid miner in the system has been converted to a weapons platform, Vasquez explained conversationally. Every cargo ship is now a troop transport. Every civilian habitat is a fortress. You're not fighting our military, War Commander. You're fighting our entire civilization. Impossible. We detected no significant military buildup. Because you were looking for traditional military assets. Battleships, orbital platforms, the kind of fixed defenses every other species builds. Vasquez leaned forward. But humans have never been very traditional. Zechthel's frustration boiled over. Enough games. All ships begin orbital bombardment of the primary world. If they want to hide among civilians, we'll eliminate both. I wouldn't do that if I were you. And why not? Because we're not just on Earth anymore. The display changed again, this time showing Skarn-controlled space. Across dozens of star systems, Skarn installations were reporting attacks. Supply convoys vanishing without a trace. Communication relays going offline. Industrial facilities suffering mysterious accidents. "How?" Zechthel whispered. "You've been fighting for 6 months, War Commander. Do you really think we've been sitting here passively waiting for you to arrive?" Vasquez's smile turned predatory. "We've been busy. Very busy. Our territory is thousands of light years from here. Was thousands of light years away. But funny thing about humans, we're really good at getting places we're not supposed to be. Right now, there are human teams operating in over 200 Skarn systems. Small groups, well-trained, highly motivated. They're not trying to conquer anything. They're just causing chaos." The intelligence reports flooded in as Zechthel's communications officer compiled data from across the hegemony. Critical infrastructure failing throughout Skarn space. Not destroyed? That would have been too obvious, but subtly sabotaged. Power grids running at reduced efficiency. Automated systems developing mysterious glitches. Supply chains disrupted by seemingly random delays and failures. "This is impossible," Zechthel repeated. "Our territory is vast. Our defenses are absolute. Your territory is vast, yes, but it's also dependent on automated systems and predictable routines. And predictable systems are vulnerable systems." Vasquez stood up from her chair. "You know what humans are really good at, War Commander? Breaking things that aren't supposed to break. Our response fleets will hunt down your infiltrators, will they? Because those same fleets are having problems of their own right now. As if summoned by her words, reports began flooding in from Skarn territories. Response fleets finding their navigation systems compromised. Supply bases experiencing power failures just as they were needed most. Command networks becoming unreliable at critical moments. You see, the thing about fighting an insurgency is that you never really know where the enemy is. That ship that just docked at your space station? The cargo hauler that's been making regular runs for years? The maintenance crew that has clearance to access your critical systems? Vasquez shrugged. Any of them could be working for us now. Zechthul felt something he had never experienced before, the sensation of losing control. His forces were vastly superior to anything the humans could field. But somehow that superiority was becoming irrelevant. "What do you want?" he demanded. "We want you to leave." "That will never happen. The hegemony does not retreat." "Then the hegemony is about to learn some hard lessons about persistence." Vasquez's expression hardened. "You came here expecting to fight the human military. Instead, you're fighting the human spirit. And that's something you can't bomb from orbit or defeat with superior numbers. We will adapt. We will overcome your tactics. Maybe. But while you're adapting to our current tactics, we'll be developing new ones. And while you're securing your territory against our infiltrators, we'll be hitting targets you haven't thought to protect yet." Vasquez smiled one last time. "The question isn't whether you can eventually defeat us, War Commander. The question is whether your empire can survive the process." The transmission ended, leaving Zechthul staring at a blank screen. Around him, his bridge crew waited for orders while reports of system failures and mysterious attacks continued to flood in. For the first time in his military career, War Commander Zechthul of the Skarn hegemony didn't know what to do next. The emergency session of the Terran Defense Council convened in the underground bunkers beneath Geneva, 2 kilometers below the Earth's surface. Representatives from every human world sat around the circular table, their faces grim as Admiral Harrison finished his briefing on the Skarn threat. "The intelligence is clear," Harrison concluded, gesturing to the holographic display showing Skarn fleet movements. "They're mobilizing everything. We estimate over 50,000 warships are converging on our space. They'll be here within 6 months." Secretary General Maria Santos looked around the table at the pale faces of humanity's leaders. "Admiral, what are our chances in a direct confrontation?" "Honestly, we'd last about 6 hours. Harrison's blunt assessment sent a chill through the chamber. "They've adapted since our first encounter. Larger formations, overwhelming numbers, simultaneous attacks on multiple fronts. They're trying to negate our tactical advantages through sheer mass. So we're doomed?" asked the representative from New Terra, his voice barely a whisper. "Not if we stop thinking like a traditional military," interrupted a new voice from the chamber's entrance. All heads turned as Dr. Elena Vasquez entered, followed by a small group of individuals who clearly weren't military officers. Santos frowned at the interruption. "Dr. Vasquez, this is a closed session." "And that's exactly the problem," Vasquez replied, taking an unauthorized seat at the table. "You're all thinking about this like it's a conventional war between nation-states. But the Skarn aren't a nation, they're an invasive species. And fighting invasive species requires different strategies." Admiral Harrison's expression darkened. "Doctor, with all due respect, this is a military matter." "Is it?" Vasquez cut him off. "Because from where I sit, this looks like an extinction event. And extinction events require evolutionary responses, not military ones." She activated her own holographic display, showing not fleet movements but something else entirely. Population distributions, resource flows, and technological development patterns across human space. "The Skarn think they're fighting the human military," she continued. "But they're not. They're fighting human civilization. And human civilization is not just our fleets and our soldiers. It's our researchers, our engineers, our farmers, our factory workers. It's every person who has ever looked at an impossible problem and said, 'Watch me solve it anyway.'" Santos leaned forward, intrigued despite herself. "What are you proposing?" "Total mobilization, but not the kind you're thinking of. We don't try to outgun the Skarn. We outthink them, out-innovate them, out-evolve them." Vasquez gestured to her companions. "These are some of humanity's best minds. Physicists, engineers, biologists, computer scientists, even game designers and science fiction writers. People who specialize in imagining the impossible." The representative from Mars spoke up. "You want to put our entire species' survival in the hands of science fiction writers? I want to put it in the hands of human creativity, Vasquez replied firmly. The Skarn have been using the same basic strategies for thousands of years because they work. But they only work against species that think conventionally. We need to throw convention out the window. Admiral Harrison shook his head. Even if we could develop new technologies, we don't have time. 6 months isn't enough to... Who says anything about new technologies? Vasquez smiled. We already have everything we need. We just need to use it differently. The hologram changed, showing Earth's industrial infrastructure. In the past century, we've built the most distributed, adaptable manufacturing base in galactic history. We can produce anything, anywhere, using locally available materials. The Skarn expect to find centralized production facilities they can target. Instead, they'll find that every asteroid mining station, every orbital factory, every even basic fabrication unit has become a weapons production facility. You're talking about turning our entire civilization into a military-industrial complex, Santos observed. I'm talking about turning our entire civilization into a weapon, Vasquez corrected. Not in the traditional sense, but in the sense that every human capability, our adaptability, our creativity, our refusal to give up, becomes part of our defense. She clicked to the next display. The Skarn strategy relies on overwhelming force and predictable responses, so we give them neither. Instead of building bigger ships to fight their bigger ships, we build thousands of smaller vessels using automated manufacturing. Instead of trying to protect fixed positions, we make everything mobile. Instead of fighting pitched battles, we wage asymmetric warfare on a galactic scale. Guerrilla tactics? Harrison asked, his interest clearly growing. Guerrilla tactics. Insurgency, terrorism, sabotage, psychological warfare. Everything we've learned from thousands of years of human conflict, Vasquez confirmed. The Skarn have never faced an enemy that refused to play by the rules of conventional warfare. The representative from Alpha Centauri raised a concern. What about our civilian populations? We can't evacuate entire worlds. We don't evacuate them, said one of Vasquez's companions, a thin man with wild hair who introduced himself as Dr. James Chen, a theoretical physicist. We hide them. Hide entire planets? Not the planets, the people. We've been working on distributed habitat technology for decades. Self-sufficient underground cities, orbital habitats disguised as asteroids, mobile populations that can relocate within hours, make it impossible for the Skarn to target our civilians effectively. Another team member, a woman with cybernetic implants covering half her face, spoke up. I'm Sarah Kim, systems engineer. We can also turn their information networks against them. The Skarn rely heavily on centralized command and control. We introduce chaos into their systems. False orders, contradictory intelligence, communication disruptions. Make their size work against them. Admiral Harrison studied the group with new respect. You're talking about abandoning everything we've built. We're talking about saving everything we are, Vasquez replied. Buildings can be rebuilt. Ships can be replaced. But human culture, human knowledge, human ingenuity, that's irreplaceable. And that's what we're really fighting for. Santos was quiet for a long moment, processing the implications. The logistics alone would be staggering. Coordinating this kind of distributed defense across multiple star systems. Which brings us to our secret weapon, said another team member, a young woman who looked barely out of university. I'm Lisa Rodriguez, and I specialize in quantum communication networks. We can build an instantaneous communication grid that spans our entire territory, real-time coordination across interstellar distances. That's impossible, Harrison stated flatly. Quantum entanglement doesn't work that way. It does if you're willing to think outside traditional physics, Rodriguez replied with a grin. We're not just talking about entangled particles. We're talking about entangled space-time itself. Localized quantum fields that remain connected regardless of distance. Vasquez stood up, her voice carrying the conviction of someone who had staked everything on a single idea. Secretary General, we're not asking you to abandon conventional military preparations. Admiral Harrison's fleets will still be crucial, but we're offering you something the Skarn have never encountered. A species that fights with its entire civilization, not just its military. And if it doesn't work, then we go extinct with our dignity intact, Vasquez replied simply. But I'd rather bet on human stubbornness than Skarn superiority. Santos looked around the table at the faces of humanity's leadership. She saw fear there, yes, but also something else. The same spark of defiance that had carried their species from the caves to the stars. How long do you need to implement this plan? 3 months for the basic infrastructure, Vasquez said. 6 months for full implementation. We'll be ready when they arrive. And our military forces? Admiral Harrison straightened in his chair. We'll serve as the visible threat, draw their attention while Dr. Vasquez's teams prepare the real defenses. Hit-and-run tactics, delaying actions make them think they're fighting a conventional retreat. Santos nodded slowly. Then we're agreed. Dr. Vasquez, you have full authorization and unlimited resources. Admiral Harrison, coordinate with her teams, and may whatever gods are listening help us all. As the meeting broke up, Vasquez lingered behind. Santos approached her with a final question. Do you really think this will work? Vasquez smiled, but there was steel in her eyes. Secretary General, 6 months ago, no one thought a handful of exploration ships could defeat a Skarn battle group. The universe is about to learn what humans can accomplish when we stop worrying about what's impossible and start focusing on what's necessary. Outside the bunker, across human space, the greatest mobilization in history began. Not just of ships and weapons, but of minds and ideas. Humanity was about to discover just how creative a species could become when faced with extinction. 3 months after the Kepler-7 rescue, Sarah found herself in a situation she had never expected, teaching advanced tactics to veteran coalition officers. The success of her unconventional methods had drawn attention from the highest levels of military command. The war room on Coalition Headquarters Station buzzed with tension as holographics displays showed void syndicate movements across the outer rim. Intelligence reports painted a disturbing picture of coordinated attacks that seemed to anticipate every coalition response. They're learning our patterns, General Cathera announced to the assembled officers. The ancient Valorian's crystalline features reflected the glow of tactical displays. Every engagement follows the same pattern. We respond with standard doctrine, they counter with prepared defenses. Our casualties are mounting while theirs remain minimal. Admiral Vosh, a massive Taurian whose species had evolved from herd animals on a high-gravity world, slammed one of his 4 fists on the table. Then we hit them harder, overwhelmed their positions with superior firepower. We've tried that approach for 6 months, General Cathera replied wearily. The Syndicate has adapted to our tactics faster than we can modify them. We need something completely different. That's when all eyes turned to Sarah, who sat quietly at the far end of the table. Her presence among such senior officers was unprecedented, but her track record had earned her a voice in strategic planning. Recruit Chen, General Cathera addressed her formally. Your methods at Kepler-7 demonstrated tactical thinking outside established parameters. We need that perspective applied to strategic-level planning. Sarah stood, feeling the weight of attention from officers who had been fighting wars since before her planet had discovered spaceflight. General, with respect, I think we're approaching this wrong. We're trying to beat the Syndicate at their own game instead of forcing them to play ours. She activated the holographic display, highlighting several recent battle sites. Look at the pattern. Every engagement happens in space on stations or on developed worlds where conventional military doctrine applies. The Syndicate chooses when and where to fight, and they choose locations that favor their strengths. Admiral Vosh snorted dismissively. Of course they do. That's basic strategy. But what if we force them to fight where they don't want to? Sarah continued. What if we take the battle to environments where human advantages become decisive factors? The room fell silent as she overlaid new data on the display. The Syndicate has been raiding outer rim colonies, but they avoid worlds with certain characteristics. Planets with complex terrain, harsh environmental conditions, or limited infrastructure for heavy equipment. General Cathera leaned forward with interest. Continue. On Earth we call it asymmetric warfare. Instead of meeting strength with strength, you use your enemy's advantages against them. The Syndicate relies on superior technology and numbers, but those become disadvantages in the right environment. Sarah pulled up detailed analyses of several unconquered worlds in disputed sectors. These planets have strategic value, but have been written off as too difficult to develop or defend. For most species they are, but humans evolved on a world that makes these places look comfortable. The presentation that followed was unlike anything the Coalition Command had ever seen. Sarah outlined strategies based on guerrilla warfare principles that had been perfected during thousands of years of human conflict. She showed how small, Mobile units could neutralize larger forces by controlling terrain and forcing engagements on unfavorable terms. The key is making the enemy fight our kind of war instead of theirs, she explained. Syndicate forces are trained for conventional combat in controlled environments. They're not prepared for warfare where the planet itself becomes a weapon. Commander Thalorix, who had been observing silently, finally spoke. This is theoretical speculation. We have no proof that human methods will work against advanced military forces. Actually, sir, we do, Sarah replied calmly. She activated a new display showing recent intelligence reports. 3 weeks ago, a human colony ship was attacked by Syndicate raiders. The colonists fought back using improvised weapons and terrain advantages. They not only repelled the attack but captured 2 enemy vessels. The room erupted in surprise conversation. Intelligence about human military capabilities was still limited, and this was the first confirmed combat between humans and Syndicate forces. How many human defenders were involved? Asked General Cathera. 87 colonists, sir. They faced over 300 Syndicate raiders with military-grade equipment. The implications hit the assembled officers like a shockwave. If civilian humans could achieve those results with improvised tactics, what could trained human soldiers accomplish with proper support? I'm recommending immediate implementation of a new strategic doctrine, General Cathera announced after a long pause. We establish forward bases on worlds previously considered unsuitable for military operations. Human advisors will train mixed coalition units in unconventional warfare techniques. Admiral Vosh objected strongly. This is madness. We're talking about abandoning centuries of proven military doctrine based on the theories of one recruit. Not theories, corrected Commander Thalorix. Results. Recruit Chen has demonstrated tactical innovation that saves lives and achieves objectives. Her methods work. The debate continued for hours, but the momentum had shifted. Recent casualties from conventional operations had shaken confidence in traditional approaches. Sarah's alternative offered hope for breaking the tactical stalemate. As the meeting concluded, General Cathera approached Sarah privately. Recruit, I'm promoting you to lieutenant and assigning you to lead the new asymmetric warfare division. You'll have authority to recruit personnel from any coalition species and access to whatever resources you need. Sarah felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. General, I'm honored, but I need to be clear about something. The methods I'm proposing aren't just tactics. They represent a completely different philosophy of warfare. Some coalition species may find them difficult to accept. Explain. Human warfare evolved from necessity. We learned to be ruthless when survival was at stake, to use every advantage available, to never give up no matter how hopeless things seemed. Other species developed honor codes and formal rules of engagement. What I'm proposing might seem barbaric to them. General Cathera considered this carefully. Lieutenant, the Void Syndicate has shown they don't respect rules of engagement. They target civilians, use hostages as shields, and employ weapons banned by galactic conventions. Perhaps it's time we fought fire with fire. As Sarah left the command center, she reflected on how much had changed since that first day when other recruits had laughed at the small human. Now she was tasked with revolutionizing coalition military doctrine and training, soldiers from dozens of species in warfare, techniques that humans had developed through millions of years of survival. The laughter had definitely stopped, but the real test was just beginning. Soon, the Void Syndicate would discover what happened when they faced an enemy that refused to play by their rules. The galaxy was about to learn why predators from Earth were truly dangerous. The jungle world of Xerion Prime had been written off by both Coalition and Syndicate planners as strategically worthless. Dense vegetation, unpredictable weather patterns, and hostile native fauna made it unsuitable for conventional military operations. That's exactly why Lieutenant Sarah Chen had chosen it as the testing ground for her new doctrine. 6 months of intensive training had transformed a mixed group of coalition volunteers into something unprecedented, a truly integrated multi-species special operations unit. They called themselves the Apex Hunters, and today they would face their ultimate test. The Void Syndicate had established a major staging base on Xerion Prime's larger moon, believing the planet below posed no threat. Intelligence reports indicated they were using the facility to coordinate attacks across 3 sectors, making it a target of critical strategic importance. The conventional approach would require a fleet action and massive orbital bombardment, Sarah explained to her assembled team. Instead, we're going to do something they'll never see coming. We're going to attack upward from a planet they think is uninhabitable. Her team represented the best of coalition integration. Korvik's 4 arms made him devastating with multiple weapon systems. Zara's chemical sensing could detect enemies through jungle vegetation. Thane's rock-like physiology provided mobile cover in open terrain. Captain Drath had volunteered for the new unit after witnessing Sarah's methods firsthand. The plan was audacious beyond anything attempted in galactic military history. Using captured Syndicate transport codes, they would launch from Zerion Prime's surface in commandeered vessels, approaching the moon base as if returning from a routine patrol. The key to this working is timing and coordination. Sarah briefed her team as they made final preparations. We have one chance to get close before they realize what's happening. After that, it's pure chaos, and chaos is where humans excel. The assault began before dawn, with Sarah's team using skills learned from months of jungle warfare training. They moved through the dense vegetation like ghosts, using natural camouflage and human stealth techniques that other species found almost supernatural. The Syndicate ground facilities were lightly defended. Since the moon base was considered impregnable, security forces never saw the attackers coming until it was too late. Sarah's close-quarters combat techniques, now adapted for her alien teammates, proved devastatingly effective in the confined spaces of the communication bunkers. Phase 1 complete, Korvik reported, his voice steady despite the intensity of the action. Ground transmitters secured. They can't warn the moon base. Phase 2 initiating, Sarah replied, activating the captured transport vessels. Remember, confidence sells the deception. We're Syndicate raiders returning from a successful mission. The approach to the moon base was the most nerve-wracking part of the operation. Any deviation from standard Syndicate protocols would trigger defensive systems that could vaporize their small force in seconds. Sarah had spent weeks studying captured communications, learning speech patterns and operational procedures that would make their ruse believable. When base control requested identification, she responded with exactly the right combination of arrogance and routine boredom that characterized Syndicate communications. Transport 77 Alpha requesting docking. Clearance, she transmitted in perfect Syndicate military cant. We've got prisoners and salvage from the Kepler raids. Cleared for Bay 12, came the response. Medical teams standing by for prisoner processing. The docking bay doors opened to admit what the Syndicate believed were their own forces. Instead, they were welcoming their own destruction. The battle inside the moon base was unlike anything in recorded galactic warfare. Sarah's team moved with coordination that seemed telepathic, each member covering others' weaknesses while exploiting their unique strengths. Human tactical flexibility combined with alien capabilities created a fighting force that defied every established military model. Syndicate defenders found themselves facing enemies who seemed to anticipate their every move. Sarah had studied their tactical doctrines exhaustively, learning to read their formations and predict their responses. Every time they tried to establish defensive positions, her team appeared from unexpected angles. "How are they everywhere at once?" demanded Base Commander Vexthul over the facility's intercom. "Security teams report infiltrators in all sectors simultaneously." The answer was pure human tactical innovation. Sarah had divided her small force into even smaller units that moved independently, but struck in coordinated waves. It created the illusion of a much larger, attacking force while maximizing their effectiveness in the base's narrow corridors. Captain Drath found himself amazed at how seamlessly the mixed species team functioned. Months of training under human doctrine had created something new. Warriors who fought with the ruthless efficiency of Earth predators, while retaining the unique advantages of their own evolution. The turning point came when Sarah reached the base's central command center. The facility's automated defenses should have made penetration impossible, but humans had learned to turn technology against itself during centuries of asymmetric warfare. "Zara, I need a chemical analysis of the atmospheric recycling system," Sarah ordered as plasma fire erupted around them. The Cytherian's chemical sensors worked rapidly, detecting industrial compounds suitable for rapid oxidation reactions, she reported. Sarah smiled grimly as she accessed the base's environmental controls. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the best. Korvik Thane, clear everyone back to minimum safe distance. What followed was a masterpiece of improvised demolition. Using the base's own atmospheric systems as a delivery mechanism, Sarah created an explosive chain reaction that disabled the command center's defenses, without compromising the intelligence data they needed to capture. The moon base fell within 4 hours of the initial assault. Syndicate forces that had seemed invincible were routed by a team smaller than a single traditional squad. More importantly, the captured intelligence revealed the full scope of Syndicate strategic planning. "This changes everything," General Kithara announced during the post-mission briefing. "The intelligence you captured shows Syndicate weaknesses we never suspected. More importantly, your methods have proven that unconventional warfare can achieve results impossible through traditional means." The success at Zirian Prime triggered a revolution in coalition military thinking. Training programs were established to teach human tactical methods to other species. Equipment was redesigned to support asymmetric operations. Most importantly, the psychological impact spread throughout both coalition and syndicate forces. Sarah found herself promoted to colonel and given command of the new Special Operations Command. The scared recruit who had once been mocked for her species' perceived weaknesses was now one of the most respected officers in coalition military history. But the real change went deeper than individual recognition. Other species had begun to understand what humans brought to the galactic community. Not just new technology or resources, but an entirely different way of approaching problems. "You know what the most important thing about humans is?" Korvik observed during a quiet moment after the ceremonies. "It's not your tactics or your adaptability. It's that you never accept that something is impossible. You always find another way." Sarah looked out at the stars through the command center's observation port, thinking about the journey from that first day of training to this moment. The galaxy was vast and full of challenges that couldn't be solved with conventional thinking. "That's what we do," she replied simply. "We're humans. When someone tells us we can't do something, we figure out how to do it anyway." Across the galaxy, Void Syndicate commanders were learning to fear reports of human involvement in coalition operations. The small, seemingly weak species had introduced an element of unpredictability that their strategic models couldn't account for. The laughter had stopped long ago. Now when other species spoke of humans, it was with respect tinged with healthy wariness. Earth's children had taken their place in the galactic community, not as supplicants seeking acceptance, but as apex predators claiming their rightful territory, and this was only the beginning.